What was the scariest city you've ever been to? Rizhao, China. Not scary so much like the others. China is insanely safe, but extremely creepy. I felt like I was on a movie set. First off, it's a city of 500,000, but it's built for a population of 10 million. But it's not like those ghost cities out west where there never was anyone. It seemed like it was actually a big city, but everyone just left suddenly. The beaches were well maintained and empty, the buses ran frequently and were empty. The streets were lined with all the usual Chinese stuff and were empty. We went into a breakfast restaurant, and the food was great, but we were the only custom, and the staff seemed surprised to see us. We asked for directions to the famous fish market. No one there could tell us where it was. It turned out to be about 750 meters away. It was massive and filled with vendors selling huge quantities of incredibly fresh fish. It was mostly empty. Also, almost everything was open until the wee hours of the morning. This is unusual even in the biggest Chinese cities, let alone this abandoned town. It was just an unsettling experience all around. Been there, felt that. Even crazier was that there were pockets of normalcy scattered across. Tiny restaurants that were live and bustling, but the moment you walked 20 paces in any direction, you were back in the ghost town. Really cool though. The people were super nice. Why is it like that there? Not sure. I only saw their lives from the perspective of a tourist. This is one of the most mature comments I've ever seen on Reddit. Not only do you, rightfully, admit you don't know, you don't make wild speculation based on your limited view. Wish more of Reddit was like this. China had weird banking regulations which led to an enormous building boom. People speculated in real estate companies which spent billions of dollars to build whole cities for millions of inhabitants without having any tenants. The bubble eventually burst. The huge real estate companies destabilized global economy and had to be bailed out by the Chinese state. But there's still dozens of mostly empty cities in China. That makes sense, but the fish market with lots of fresh fish and no customers and restaurants fully staffed, despite not enough customers, doesn't make sense. Port-au-Prince saw a newly shot woman on the sidewalk, and the next day, a human finger in a trash heap. Had a college classmate from Haiti. He said he saw someone get decapitated with a machete on the way to school once. I have family in Haiti, and I remember going to a wedding with armed guards outside. Being from the States, they let me hold an AK-47. They probably shouldn't have. I was pissed drunk. Luckily, nothing bad happened. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere without an armed guard in the car. Holy crap, I came here to say the exact same thing. I went there for earthquake relief in 2010, and we were escorted everywhere by armed guards and weren't allowed to walk anywhere. We could only travel by car. We were there 10 weeks after the earthquake, and at night they would put the bodies in a huge pile and burn them. We all came home with horrible upper respiratory infections because of it. They were also everywhere in the streets. Some of the medical stuff we dealt with, I can't even mention here. And the saddest thing is that it's gotten 10 times worse in the years since then. I get emotional just thinking about it. I knew a woman who went to Haiti for volunteer disaster relief. If I remember correctly, it was the 2010 earthquake and hurricane. When she arrived, she said it was complete chaos and somehow ended up at a local hospital. Once there, people started bringing her injured persons, asking her what to do. She was not a medical provider of any kind, but there was no hospital staff or anyone with medical experience available either. She was, however, an environmental lab technician, so was aware of basic medical protocols and was certified in first aid. She said she ended up suturing quite a few cuts. I'm certified in first aid too, but in the US, we only do first aid as a way to stop further damage with the expectation that professional medical help will be available soon. I'm not sure what I'd do if I had to help an injured person in a major disaster like that, with a slim likelihood that a medical provider would be available anytime soon. I went as a 15-year-old on a volunteer trip and was allowed to birth a baby and give it its first injection, fill pharmacy orders, and lance and drain an infection on a toddler's foot, all with minimal guidance and zero experience. It was wild. We took a group of orphans to the beach and were chased off by a man with a machete. Juarez, Mexico. I'm an Irish Mexican. Redhead. Went with cousins to see my aunt and uncle. At the time, 2007, it was the most murderous city on earth. My family members were in a cartel. There was a cartel war going on. Had armed men all around at all times. For all the money and cars and opulence at their home, it was like being in prison. The tension in the air was thick. I was treated like a king, but that whole week, I was terrified inside. Different world. Was told, no matter what happens, do not call police. They worked for the other guys. I was told that if shit kicked off and anyone made it through the gates, to grab a gun and shoot myself. That would be the best possible outcome. I haven't been back. Why the fuck would they allow you to visit during a cartel war? They're actively involved in LMFAO. Feel like they could have given a heads up. Well, he wanted me to collect money in the US to send money south. So, he brought me down to show me what it was all about. I agreed to do it, but changed my mind when I got home. They aren't as brazen and open about the violence in the US, but they can reach you anywhere. I was witness to what happens to those who fuck up. Family or not, you're dead. You're just less likely to be skinned alive or fed to a tiger or boiled in acid in the States. But if they want you, they'll get you anywhere in the world. Let's say I went to prison for money laundering. My surname alone would have certain prison gangs hunting me. It was very bluntly explained to me. I was too scared to say no to his face, but he was cool about it when I changed my mind. He also said my father would kill us both if he found out, so I got lucky. The doorman in my hotel in Johannesburg stopped me as I was walking out and told me, "You won't last 5 minutes out there. Go back to your room where it's safe." My mate got picked up by the police in Johannesburg after going out for a walk to see the area at dusk. Given a ride back to the hotel and told not to do that again, it's too dangerous for tourists. Port-au-Prince, Haiti, didn't matter. Day or night, people looked at you with hatred. I was in a tent camp in Port-au-Prince in 2012. I was 14 and naive, so I didn't notice much, but apparently a group of young men started slowly surrounding our group. We got the heck out of there as soon as we could. I suspect Haiti in general is scary right now, that lack of goved issue. But one of my friends spent 3 months in Port-au-Prince before the big earthquake for a work assignment and loved it. Explored much of the city and areas around it back then. Was in St. Louis with my cousin and we crossed that bridge. E Street. Louis has got to be the most dangerous feeling place I've ever been. Streetlights busted out at night. Everything run down like abandoned. Bullet holes in the stop signs, etc. We pulled up GPS and got the fuck out of there real quick, lol. Was working in Granite City, stayed by the arch. Got lost across the bridge. Dudes on the corner gave me directions out and ended with, "Fuck the stop signs, white boy, get the fuck out." All I need to hear. Yep, they tell you not to stop at stoplights in East STL for good reason. I drove around there when I played Pokemon Go around the country one summer. The neighborhoods terrified me, even though the city I was from wasn't exactly safe either. Streets with every other home boarded up though, and people looking like they'd kill you in front of the others. My Pokemon stayed in those gyms for months though. Grew up in STL. East STL is wild. Bars open 24/7 too, so everyone ends up there after the Missouri side close. One time, there was a drive-by in the parking lot of the East STL clubs. Everyone just ducked down and then continued going into the bars as if nothing out of the ordinary happened. Like seriously? Kingston, Jamaica. I switched hotels to one more secure. Early on my last morning, I was going to the airport and my original hotel was on fire. I have a permanent scar on my forehead from Kingston. A little reminder of my last visit to Jamaica. People scampering to get on a bus, climbing on each other's backs. An old-fashioned Coke bottle was thrown at the bus and exploded into the crowd. One shard hit me right above the eye. There are no ambulances or police to come rescue you. Had to walk for a few miles in the heat to the nearest doctor covered in blood. Got stitches. Boarded the plane with a bloody patch on my head, fought the urge to kneel down and kiss the carpet at the Philadelphia airport. Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. Every property surrounded by solid fences topped with razor wire, and if you can afford it, patrolled by armed guards and guard dogs. As a visitor, you should never use a local taxi or walk outside your hotel compound at night. I went there as a 15 white boy with blonde hair and blue eyes for their national swimming comp, and we were hosted by families. The lady hosting us said to me right after we got there, "If you want to go for a walk, don't take any money or wear a watch because you will get robbed." The word will was so crazy to me, not if or could. It was will. Others that stand out. They had a 14-year-old security guard who was a member of the most feared gang in PNG, so younger than me. They informed us that this is because if anyone touched their home, they would enforce it. They had a beautiful home, but it was surrounded by barbed wire and 2 huge German shepherds and 2 maids. They had satellite with every movie in the theaters and hundreds of channels. They informed me that copywriting was not enforceable in PNG. True not, I didn't care. It was awesome. One of the best swimmers at the comp was attacked and stabbed with a piece of corrugated iron, and his friend abducted on the first night of the meet. Anytime there was a red light at a stoplight, they just blew through it because they would get it carjacked. People would stare at you and smile and have these crazy eyes and bright red stains on their teeth from eating betel nut. It was so hot and humid during the day, they didn't let us compete from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. There is a lot more. With this, the place, the people, the culture is insanely beautiful. Isla Trinitaria in southern Guayaquil, Ecuador, absolutely bonkers. Can confirm, was there about 10 years ago. Armed police at every corner, went out to purchase supplies late at night, and ended up back at my hotel 6 hours later, having been taken around the city by a sketchy but lovely group of dudes. Oh, and once got invited to an after party above a club, and at 6 a.m. went to leave it. The guy went and checked first. Turns out we were invited because people were waiting outside to kidnap us. Fun times. St. Louis, it was weird for a few reasons, but the scariest was when I was leaving the hotel myself, my mom, and my 2 large dogs were staying at. We saw a man messing with my car, like hood was propped. As I started raising my voice and approaching with my large barking dogs, he ran. I made sure to push the hood down so it would latch, or so I thought. We loaded the car up and drove away as fast as possible. As soon as we got on the freeway, the hood blew up and almost hit the windshield. I honestly have no idea how it didn't, maybe a safety feature, so I had to pull over and re-secure it. Mofo obviously messed something up on purpose because he pulled up behind us. I got back in the car, my Diggs and mom losing their shit, drove slowish, put my hazards on, and my mom called 911. He sped off after taking pics. Weirdest experience of my life. The hotel was so sketchy, and my intuition was telling me to leave the entire time. I honestly think the man was in on something with the hotel staff, or was hotel staff himself. My 2 dogs were extremely on edge, and they're generally easygoing. Plate numbers were stolen, and police wouldn't doing anything. Juarez, around 2007. They told me that the cartel had some heads hanging from a bridge for everyone to see, and they didn't get taken down until several hours later. I remember being stupid and going to raves in Juarez. Around those years, it was the most dangerous city in the world during the height of the Iraq War. Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. At the height of the Iraq War, it was still listed as more dangerous. The gangs ran the city, driving around in technicals with mounted machine guns. Hotels had 6-foot thick concrete-walled fences with razor wire and armed guards. For an added cost, they offered rape cages, a cage that would drop down over your bed when a sensor was triggered to protect you from being raped if people broke in. Garberville in Humboldt County, CA in the 90s. This was way before pot was legal, and as an outsider, you were absolutely looked at like you were a fed. Scariest damn town I've ever stopped in. They made a doc about the area. Aya ERC, it's called Murder Mountain. Tijuana. I lived there for 2 years as a runaway teen. This was over 30 years ago, but I'm fairly certain it hasn't gotten better. Cairo in Egypt. As a white non-Muslim female, the amount of sexual harassment I experienced was unprecedented. It's interesting because I didn't necessarily worry about someone attacking me or stealing from me, but I worried about other things happening. The entire country is impoverished and corrupt. At one point, I saw a police officer hold a child, like 70 years old maybe, at gunpoint because the child was acting out and he thought it was funny. At another point, a person got hit by a car, and a couple bystanders were doing everything they could while most kept on walking as if nothing was even happening. I was at a restaurant near there, and it took over 30 minutes for an ambulance to get there. I'm unsure if he made it. I can't even tell you how many homeless children I saw begging for food money with no parents anywhere to be found. I've been to other countries where this is a common scam tactic, but this was totally different. The reality is that when a country is that corrupt, public safety goes out the window. That is actually what scared me most about it. This didn't happen to me, but my uncle and auntie. For some context for what follows, my uncle was about 6'7" and built like a rugby player, and my auntie looked like your stereotypical blonde Dityo trophy wife. It was in the 90s and they went to Cairo for a holiday. They didn't have to worry too much about people harassing them or scamming them due to my uncle being huge until a vendor asked my uncle how much for my auntie. My uncle, who was not thinking, said 20 camels, to which the vendor yelled, "Deal!" Grabbed my uncle's hand, shook it, and tried to drag my auntie away. Well, my uncle was having none of that and punched him. They ended up having flea cario, as there was an angry mob trying to beat up, kill my uncle, and B, take possession of my auntie. Till the day he died, my auntie did not let him live down the time that he sold her for 20 camels, and she nearly became some random guy's property. My wife really wants to go to Egypt to see the pyramids, as she has been fascinated by them for years now, but I refuse to take her. I have traveled lots of places in this world. The most scared I have ever been was lost in downtown Baltimore at night on a weekend. I had made a series of mistakes trying to go around the city and had accidentally taken a spur that put me right into the downtown. I have no clue what area of town I drove through, but the only human beings that I saw out and about at 3 o'clock in the morning looked like zombies. It's really hard to describe, but the way that they moved, the way that they looked at me as I drove by, it was very scary. Out of desperation, this was way before cell phones did anything more than phone calls and basic texts. I was still using a paper atlas. I stopped at a 7-Eleven. I was waiting in line to ask directions, and a guy went out of his way to ask me what I was doing there. That's how much I stood out. I told him that I was trying to get directions to get back onto the highway, and he told me that he was an undercover cop. Things were about to go down right there, and I needed to leave. I told him that's what I was trying to do. He thought about it for a second, told me to get in my car, follow him, and try to keep up. He would get me to an on-ramp and then go back to the store. He drove like a bat out of hell, and did get me to the freeway, and then busted a U-turn and flew away. I have no clue how bad my night would have continued to be if he hadn't been there and guided me out of there. Tijuana. I saw a dead body on my way to the bus terminal, just laying on the sidewalk. There were people standing around him, smoking, drinking, and just having a good old time while dude is just dead, like dead af, stiff, purple, and blue. Wildest shit I've ever seen. No one gave a single shit. New Orleans. I loved it. But right outside the touristy areas gets a little sketchy, including the guy on drugs that broke into our hotel, also cut himself crawling through the glass window, and bled all over the hotel trying to kick people's doors in. Food was good though. I went to college in Utica, a city in central New York, primarily run by the mafia. It was ranked as one of the 10 safest cities in the US at the time. You could walk anywhere as long as you didn't interfere. In the 4 years I was there were 3 murders. A guy who turned state's evidence was shot in a crowded bar, but no one saw or heard anything. Another locked themselves in the trunk of their burning car. It was ruled a suicide. And someone jumped into the river in midwinter. Another suicide. I went to college in Rhode Island in the late 80s. An acquaintance was robbed one night. Everything stolen. The dude who was robbed was good friends with the son of someone connected to the Providence mob, allegedly. The next day, every single stolen item was returned, sitting on his lawn, LOL. Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, not all, but whatever part of San Bernardino, I got off the freeway at night to stop at a gas station to call my sister for directions. When I told her my cross streets, she said, "Get back on the freeway right now." I looked up and the crackheads were circling my car and tapping on my window. Hollywood, not scary in a physically dangerous sense, just eerie and unsettling. After seeing the Walk of Fame and the Hollywood sign, it just had this weird vibe overall. I wish I could articulate it better, but it felt strange for sure. Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Almost got robbed literally 100 feet outside the airport walking to a cab. Luckily, I saw police, and my instincts made me shout hard, which made the police aware, and the thieves fled the scene. Almost lost my brand new Nikon back in the time. I'm laughing at all the American cities listed here. Canadian cities get straight up guffaws. It was Guatemala City for me, but that's just because the driving was terrifying. The buses were awesome though. My travel companion, who has worked all over the world as an Army Ranger and DoD employee, would not allow us to leave the hotel after dark. That said, visiting Tikal was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Highly recommended. Wonderful people and incredibly affordable. I have a friend from Honduras, and the stories he has shared are nightmare fuel. He would sit in the hospital while his dad was dying of cancer and regularly see MS-13 members coming in missing arms from machete attacks. Bahnhofsviertel in Frankfurt, Germany. I've lived and worked in some of the roughest places in the US, Baltimore, Detroit, etc. That section of Frankfurt is the only place that has legit scared me since moving to Europe 15 years ago. Open-air drug market, prostitution, addicts, scammers, pickpockets, wild place. Honorable mention to the cab driver in Belgrade who sussed out I was American and took the scenic route to my hotel to show me all the buildings that were blown up by American bombs like it was my fault. Baltimore. Had a convention there a few years ago. I was told to not stray more than a block from the hotel that was in the nicest area downtown. Later in the day, while riding in a taxi, I asked the driver if this was good advice, and he agreed. He immediately turned and pointed to the street corner while we were stopped at a red light and said a man was shot in the back of the head in the middle of the day in front of the nicest mall in town. Fun fact, Baltimore, population 600K, has more homicides per year than all of Germany combined, population 84 million. Thank you for watching. Write comments, put likes. Do not forget to watch other videos.